Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of So You Want to Open a Hobby Store with Chris and Jay.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about creating an identity and having a plan. So sort of like shaping a brand and thinking about, what we covered last week was sort of the whys, like why do you want to do it, all that sort of...
More existential questions.
Yeah, which are kind of important before you go on this journey.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't checked that video, you can go back and watch that. I think it kind of lays the seeds for this. We're going to try to do them in an order that makes sense from when you start thinking about it to when you would actually open the doors.
Yeah.
And so obviously the thing that should follow the why is the what. So
Yes.
Sort of starting to think about what kind of a business do you actually want to make?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to specifically this kind of business or whatever, at least in North America, you kind of have to like think about, there's like two, and it's funny enough is you can kind of do a hybrid, but they're really quite different as you have cards and then you have miniatures or / board games or whatever. And they both can have quite different setups and business models. I know you're used to seeing them like probably under one roof pretty often, but starting out, it can be quite complicated because one requires like cards, for example, it requires like lots of a different investment in capital, probably you need more staff, you need to be open later probably. And then it has other like volatile market forces because the product like a stock goes up and down quite a lot, and supply can be difficult. So whereas miniatures is like it's a slower burn. It's like you don't have to necessarily like spend a lot up front, or you still going to spend a lot of money, but like it's going to kind of sit and like I don't know, it doesn't really go bad, if that makes sense. Like card games can kind of bounce around a lot. So anyway, yeah. So
yeah, I think I'd say like adding to like there's a level of specialty required in selling each one probably.
Yeah.
Like you can definitely, and we've seen these stores, there's people that'll just put stuff on the shelf and that's the amount of effort they're going to put into it. We have X, you're coming in for X,
right?
Hopefully I can sell it to you.
Yeah.
And I think that what Jay's touching on is like, it's a very important question is do you want to do like a very diverse, almost like a classic small town hobby shop?
Yeah.
Where you have like just a little bit of everything? Or do you want to really hone in and specialize because you're really particularly passionate about something specifically, right?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that you have to kind of like, those are two extremes. Like there's probably a lot of middle ground. Like we kind of explored the middle ground when we first opened.
Yeah, our store was very eclectic when we opened. We had Magic, we had board games, we had some miniatures. We had a lot going on, I guess. Or we tried to do a catch-all of everything, and it worked okay. But as time went on, you could tell we started to slowly find the things that worked well for us and that worked well for our market, like our particular. Because so that's the other thing is like where you open has some significance, and kind of what's around. What are the other stores? What are the other types of businesses around, and how do they do it? And something that's tricky is sometimes you can never understand loyalty. Like there are stores that could be, or there could be run in a way that is, let's just say, inefficient or whatever. And people will continue to go there just because that's what they do habitually and routinely.
I used to have. I remember reading this article about like there's a science behind how far people will walk for a coffee.
Right.
And I get that, beverages are like not hobby products, but don't discount that. Like, people will go to what's close a lot of the time because they're just habitual humans or convenience or just it's like time in the day. Like sometimes you don't have time to hop in the car for an extra 10 minutes, right? So but what we will cover the sort of like picking a location and like that sort of thing in more detail in its own video, because I think it's kind of worthy of its own topic time. But I think it kind of bleeds into like what as well, like you were saying. Like you can't separate them.
It's a bit of like, it more has to do with like again, the example is if you went heavily into cards, tradable cards or whatever, you probably need a gaming space, so it needs to have the, so now that will dictate kind of where you might be able to find that,
Sure.
feasibly. But anyway, so again, so now you're really, so you have to decide now, like what are you going to carry, and then from there you have to kind of go into like, this is going to sound weird, but how are you going to carry it? Because like you can you can nibble on things, you can go full in on things, you can be the local, you can find a specific niche of something that doesn't exist in that area, and you can capitalize on it. So our specialty is probably going to be the variety of the hobby supplies, like how much paint, for example,
and depth.
Is like
depth and
most. Yeah. There are, I'm sure it's funny, Chris and I get to like meet with other hobby store owners at these occasional, like the local distributors will have like these open houses, and we'll go and just come and see what new products are being shown in the next year or something, or you get to demo some board games or whatever, and you get to see, and they all have such different minds of like, and they're all successful in different ways, they'll have different minds of what they think is important and not, and a lot of it has to do, like they're successful because they picked a specific thing and they put it in the right spot. Like it's kind of,
sure, that's a good way to put it,
right? Like, so
so I think definitely having a good sense, like step one, having a good sense of what you want your identity to be. I don't think, like I said, it's okay if it's not completely firm. Like you want a little bit of flexibility, I think, as well, like being open-minded and being like, well, I had a strong sense that this was a good idea and it's not working. So like being able to kind of, being a little malleable in that sense. And playing to your own strengths, like sort of the why video we covered last week. So like having the what and the why kind of go together in a way. So that like if you're strong in a certain thing, like if you're really into cards yourself, it probably would make sense to have some cards, in your shop.
Exactly. If you are the type of person who would follows that, knows all what's going on in the world of Magic or whatever, and you play often, maybe you even play in sanctioned events, and a lot of people. And you've befriended or have acquaintances with a lot of people. It's good. If you lean into that kind of gets you instant, like those people will know who you are, and they might seek out your store or come support you, or you'll at least know what's good and I know what's good, but what will sell and what won't, because like some product ranges have a lot going on. So like an example would be like for Games Workshop, for example, if I was I'm really into miniatures, and let's say I chose not to stock 40K or something because my specialty was Necromunda or something. Like there's an example where you probably went too far that way or whatever.
Don't open a hobby store.
Right.
That was mean. No, I don't mean that.
But
no,
it's nothing to. It's just
that's where you just like you're like that. That's where like I think Jay brought that up. It's good. Is like that might hurt you as opposed to help you if you're not careful, right? If you're like, I love Necromunda so much, Necromunda's going to be like a big focus in my hobby store, and like
you can make it relevant, but
you can run activities, but that should not be the bread and butter of what you're doing, right? So making a list, like literally a physical list. This kind of can turn into like the beginnings of a business plan, which I think is really important. Making a list of all the things that you
charge for this.
I know. It's like the government.
The first 2 episodes are free. Episode 3 is behind the Patreon or whatever.
Making a list of all the items.
Financial episode.
Of all the items that you would think, and try to be as specific as you can, right? Don't just be like, I want to carry Games Workshop. Okay, what the hell does that mean? There's some shops that have like a little bestsellers rack that has just like a couple of new releases and like a core game or two on it. And then there's shops like ours that carry literally everything we're allowed to carry. And then there's other shops that go even further than us that have multiples of everything that you're allowed to carry. So where are you going to stand on the spectrum of that? And you also obviously want to think about the cost of that as well.
Of course.
And sort of start to think about how much money that's going to cost you, right? Because that plays a huge factor when you're opening a business as well.
Yeah, so you want to have a blend of the things that are the anchors, I guess you want to call them, the things that are like well known, have very strong data behind them, the 40Ks, the whatever commanders or whatever, and then you can dabble in some of the more niche things, and you can also like we experimented with this quite a bit when we were in the earlier years of our businesses. We were like the place that had a lot of miniature games and products that actually no other stores had. We took chances on really small niche things. Some were okay, some were bad. generally speaking, over time, I can tell you for sure, a lot of them didn't survive the long haul because they were just too specific and too niche. And sometimes you have to swallow that. You have to be like, that was good, but it had its course. So I guess really like there are just some of the bigger product ranges are just they're so like I don't know what you call them. I don't know, slam dunk's not the right word, but it's just like it's so important to not. You can't be like if you're for example if you hate WotC or Games Workshop because of some business practices or whatever it is, and you're not going to carry their products, you just don't open the doors because it's like you're just gonna be set up to fail instantly. But yeah, if you can make it work, then you can opens you up to getting into some of those other passion projects and games that you really like, and there are stores that have like fantastic community like I think you were describing in a previous video. There's a store, Black Knight Games. They have a great Blood Bowl community. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm sure that's just bonus on top.
And that's the way you have to look at it, right? Yeah. Is like you're thinking about opening a business. Like Jay used the best word I think, which is you need to think of your anchors first. What's going to keep you planted where you are, paying the bills, and actually able to kind of do the things that are more passion projects for you that keep you interested in running the business. And those small games can be really good and successful. And I think one of the things we liked about bringing them in is customers are always looking for something new to try and a reason to come back to your store every month. I mean, like, oh, what's new? I hear people ask me that a lot. Yeah. They want you to tell them what's new. Yeah. So if you aren't willing to sort of like try those things once in a while, and we'll probably talk about that near the end of our series on opening a hobby store or like running a hobby store. And so they don't necessarily need to be on the list of your opening the door products, but it's something definitely to consider for the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think once you kind of have an idea of, we'll call it a brand or identity, you have a good list of the things you want to have on your shelf on day one. Definitely start thinking about where you're going to get those from, and I will talk about that maybe more when we talk about costs and expenses and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't source it, like, it's not worth even looking at, right? Yeah. So that's another big part of things, right? This is a very often explained question. Someone will be like curious about a product because it's prevalent on the internet, it's being talked about, or they ask, can you get X or Y? And I have to be pretty blunt with them. I'll do a quick look, and if it's not easily sourceable in Canada and I have to order it overseas or from the UK or even from the US, pretty much it's pretty quickly like, I don't think so. Like, it's just a no. It's just a no. And you know what? That's okay. Like, it really is important to be able to say no to people. Yeah. And give and this is a part we try to do this is explain to our customers why we can't do something for them. Yeah. I'll even go to the point where like a random person will call on the phone sometimes, looking for a product, like a board game. This happens with board games a lot, but it can happen with Games Workshop products. And this doesn't really help me at all, and it's just more of a like, it's a good habit. Mm-hmm. I'll try to explain, like, look, if this is sold out online, don't waste your time calling around shops, right? No one has it. We all get it from the same place, right? Or this board game's not available at the distributor. It means it's out of print. That's correct. Don't pay the crazy inflated price on Amazon. It will get reprinted. Just wait a couple months, right? Yeah. So that's a good kind of habit to get in, but. So once you have that kind of firmly established, so you kind of have a bit of an identity in mind. The next step for me is finding examples of that working in the real world. Mm-hmm. So can you point to other businesses, maybe not necessarily even in your community, but like that you've been to before or that you've seen online and kind of like follow them maybe? Does this template work and has it worked before? Yeah, so an example comes to my mind is, like, for example, Board Game Cafe. For a while, I remember when we opened, this is funny, this is like 9 years ago, kind of friends, family, or whatever, or coworkers or people at the time, they're like, oh, you should open a Board Game Cafe. Like, they said that. Man. This was a very common thing. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with the Board Game Cafe business. Well... But like but I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, because it's like, it's not again, the casual observer who walks into a board game place or board game cafe is like, oh, I sit down. This is cool. This is great. And there's some board games on the wall, and I can get a coffee, and you're like, cool. Oh my God, there's so many things going here. You spend there $14. That's like, first of all, you gotta what's the revenue look like? Yeah. But like, if you're, and now it's like, it's a restaurant and a game thing. And you have to have different staff that can miraculously
simultaneously make food and explain and play board games with people somehow. Like, anyway, it's actually. Oh, and then also because it's perceived to be easy, it can sometimes be saturated. There's pockets of cities that have like way too many in a small area because everyone thinks it's like, oh, it's fine or whatever, you know. So that one always hits me. I was like yeah, you can't just like. Yeah, sometimes the idea. This is why you have to have these conversations.
A model business isn't one that's been open for a couple of years.
Yeah,
just as a basic guide. Like, and that's nothing against a new business.
Yeah,
I have all the respect in the world for anyone who tries to do this because it is that hard.
Yeah.
I think though, if you're using an example of someone who's only been open a couple of years, you just don't know. That place is actually doing well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look more at a place that's been in the 5 to 10 or even the 15 range. There's a good chance they kind of have a better idea of what they're doing because they've been able to, you know, there's a good chance in 5 to 15 years there's been a recession or a economic downturn or a pandemic or
has happened,
something that they didn't expect happen. They had a flooded roof or something.
Which has happened.
A fire. I don't know. Some crazy disaster event has happened to them.
That's it. And that's the thing is also if it's been more than 5 years, like has anything changed in that business? You know, you can be observant, look around, like see. Is it same old? Is there little bits of change? Because like stagnation does also kind of show that it can be the beginning of a slow downturn,
decline, right?
Decline, yeah. But with the board game cafe thing, I did have a point I was coming to, and that is like I can only think of a couple that are very successful. So in Toronto, there's I think they have maybe 2 locations. Snakes and Lattes is a famous one.
Right. Yeah.
But like, look at all the things that they put together. First, and this is what like as soon as I did this in my head, I was like, this is like very difficult to do because of like the costs involved. But like, they got prime location and like very expensive real estate, but they are downtown and they have like insane foot traffic,
student populace,
and they got the students, and then they got like they made sure that that everything is just right. And you start adding it up, and this is potentially, it's funny, it looks like a very simple business, but it could easily be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up because of all these things that are involved. And probably, I don't know the owners, but likely it was a consortium of owners, and they probably had like a guy who knows how to open and run a restaurant.
Right, exactly.
They probably had a guy who knows a lot about board games, and they probably opened with like dozens of staff. Like, this is no joke. This is not a simple, like, I'll just, get a little 800 square foot little unit.
I like to cook and I like the hobby.
Yeah,
what could go wrong,
like,
right?
It's actually like one of the scarier ones in my opinion.
Sure.
Whereas you could, in theory, like pop into a smallish town or whatever you want to call it, like maybe a collection of small towns, and if you're the only one there, you could just put some product on the wall and kind of do okay, maybe, right?
Yep.
Like it's anyway. It's a little more complicated than that, but. There's a lot to consider. So yeah, think wise about what you carry and why. And ideally they're things that you know stuff about. Like, I think for the longest time, we'll end off on this like dumb anecdote is and this is our own humility or whatever, is like for the longest time we didn't carry any Pokemon because we were just like we didn't have kids yet. We were just like, I don't know. I didn't grow up with Pokemon really. Like,
I did a little bit.
Like with the cards, like that much. Like it was kind of like an afterthought. Yeah. And I was like, I guess kids buy these, but then, there's another dumb thing. You're like, well, they get sold at Walmarts and things. You're like, how is it? And boy, were we wrong because we just put some on the shelf and they sold. And even though there's like lots of places to get it.
Yeah.
So that was an example of like being too in your ways and not and being like, well, I don't know anything about it. But that being said, I think if we decided to open as a Pokemon store at the start, then it would be a different tale. It would probably not go as well because we'd probably spend too much on it and not know what we're doing and miscalculated the population of people that would come and play at the store.
And you know what? I look back and I say like, it's a good example of like, should it have been on the original opening door list? Maybe. There's a chance it wouldn't have been a bad thing.
Yeah.
But having a focus at the beginning and getting those things right is sometimes more important than making a little bit of easy money that you just don't know about. Mm-hmm. So, we're being in a great place and then adding something later and being like, oh, that was successful, great. Part of that is because you have a good core business and you can add something to the side and it doesn't interfere with your brand too much, right? Yeah. It's just an accessory thing on the side, right? So I'll end on the note with just a kind of a more of a feeling thing. I've been in a lot of hobby stores in my life, and One thing I'll say is, and I don't know how you feel about this, but the places that get the identity thing right have a soul, like a soul almost, right? Like there's a tangible feeling that you go into those places, and it's hard to explain, but you just sometimes feel if that place has a vibe, and if there's something about it, right? And that's like the products, the layout, the staff that work there. Yeah, it's all that stuff working in conjunction together.
Yeah, no, the soul thing is all the long term whatever successful stores, they all have it. They all have something about them that appeals to different people, and there's a lot of topics that we can spring into different videos. Another one we'll go into is like the customers that you choose to have. You got that right. You can choose the customers you want. I know it sounds weird. I know generally you're like, I'll take anyone, but no, we'll give you reasons why you shouldn't take anyone.
Yeah.
But all of that combines to create what'll ultimately be a store that people like and will want to go to and keep supporting. Because we have lots of people that will go out of their way to come talk to us for the expertise or even just to talk to us specifically. You can't underestimate that as well, for sure.
Okay, well, without going too much into other topics, we'll end it there. If you like these series of videos, subscribe. That helps us out a bunch. And we also created a Patreon where you can throw us a tip if you feel so inclined, or you can add to one of the better tiers and just kind of help us build the channel up and get cool things like fancy new cameras.
Extra cameras.
Extra cameras. We'll have different views of Jay's face as he's talking about things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Until next time.
Bye.
Take care.